Hello, my name is Lena Wen. I'm the 4-H Extension Agent for Fauquier County. I'm at the Northern Virginia 4-H Center today, and I'm going to take you on a hike. This is a hike that we like to take during 4-H camp, specifically during the outdoor living skills class. The 4-H Center is really awesome in that it backs up to the Appalachian Trail. So we're going to start this hike from Peters and Rector's Lodge. And then we're going to hike on a spur for a little bit, and then that spur will connect to the Appalachian Trail. So I'm going to just hike and stop along the way and tell you about some cool plants and other things that we might see. So let's go. So the first plant I'm going to stop and show you is a plant that we want to stay away from on the trail. So this is poison ivy. The saying about poison ivy is leaves of 3, let it be. So there are lots of bushes in the forest and other plants in the forest that have 3 leaves, but in general it's a good rule of thumb that if you don't know what it is, you should stay away because it might be poison ivy. Poison ivy is a vine, so it likes to climb up trees like this poison ivy is doing. It's also a very hairy vine. So if you ever see a hairy vine like this on a tree, you want to stay away from that too, because those hairs can also rub the oil on your skin that will give you the rash. One cool thing about poison ivy though is that it does produce berries. You can see some berries starting to form down here. So that is actually an important food source for a lot of wildlife. So even though it's not a great plant for us, it is actually pretty good for wildlife. So it's not all bad. If I come over here, there's another cool plant. So this is wild grapes. And this is actually an edible plant. You can see some little grape clusters starting to form down here. Right now it is May 21st. So if we came back in maybe late July or August, those would actually be good to eat if we could get to them before bears and other critters did. They're not as big as the grapes that you get in the grocery store, but they taste pretty similar. I think they taste a lot like Concord grapes, so what they make Welch's grape juice out of. But you have to eat a lot of them to really be satisfied. So let's keep hiking. So when you're hiking, you will see a lot of marks like this on trees. This is what is called a blaze. So it will tell you which trail you're on. Right now we are on a spur of the Appalachian Trail. So we haven't made it to the Appalachian Trail yet, but we're pretty close. And so this spur is marked blue the whole way up. Once we get to the Appalachian Trail, we'll notice that the blaze color changes. All right, so I wanted to stop and show you this tree. This tree has lots of holes in it, and I suspect those holes were made by woodpeckers. Woodpeckers will peck into trees so that they can make some sap come out, and then that sap will serve as kind of a trap for bugs. So then they'll come back when the bugs get stuck in the sap and they have a tasty treat waiting for them. So woodpeckers will peck into wood for that purpose, but they also peck into wood so that they can make their homes. Woodpeckers also sometimes peck on wood just to attract a mate. So if you ever hear like a rapid fire woodpecker noise, that means that that woodpecker is just trying to find a mate. If you hear a slow, steady chiseling noise, they're either trying to get some food or make a home. So there's another couple of cool plants down here. So this one is garlic mustard. So this plant is actually an invasive species. It's all up and down this trail. But garlic mustard is actually edible. Right now is not a great time to be harvesting it because it's already going to seed, these little seed pods, and like most greens, once something starts going to seed, it gets a little bit bitter. Not that it would hurt you in any way, but it just wouldn't be very tasty. But if we would have been back here about a month ago or maybe a month and a half ago, we could have collected the leaves, just like this. Could have harvested the leaves and cooked them in some like olive oil or butter, and It actually kind of tastes like garlicky greens. So it's pretty tasty actually, if you like greens. Here, this is called bed straw, and they call it bed straw because I think back in the day people used to stuff mattresses with it, and you know, it made a comfy place to sleep. But you can also apparently use it to curdle milk and start to make cheese. I've never actually tried that, so I don't know how well it works, but that is what I've heard. My son calls bed straw Velcro plant because it has a very sticky underneath part on the leaves, and it sticks to you just like Velcro. So this is wild blackberry. There is a ton of wild blackberry in this area, so even if you don't come to the 4-H center to hike, chances are if you're hiking sometime in mid-June, maybe early July, you'll find a lot of wild blackberries to be picked. Wild blackberry, right now it's May 29th, and so there's a lot of flowers on the bushes. But if you take a closer look at this flower, you see in the middle there is a berry that is starting to form. So it doesn't look too much like a berry right now, but in a few weeks those flowers will start to fall off, and really the berry will get a lot bigger and juicier. So as I was driving here, there was a ton of blackberries that I saw on the side of the road, and generally you find these anywhere where you're at the edge of a forest, so where there's some shade but also some light coming in. So we find a lot of them on the sides of roads, also along trails, because you know you have some forests in the trails, but you've also cleared away some trees for the trail itself. This is a violet, and the flower is actually edible. So you're not going to find enough violets to make a great meal, but you can actually put them on top of salads. Some people actually candy them and put them on top of cupcakes or other baked goods to make them look pretty. And you can eat them, and you know, they don't really taste like much, but they make things look pretty. So if you're looking to fancy up your salad, you can go find some violets to do that. So on this rock is an organism called a lichen. A lot of people confuse this with moss. There is actually some moss on this rock too. That's the darker green stuff. But the lighter green organism is called a lichen. And it is actually two organisms living together as one in a mutualistic relationship. So those two organisms are a green algae and a fungus. And what I mean by mutualistic is that by living together, they're better able to survive than if they were to live apart. So in this case, the green algae does photosynthesis and it creates food for the organism. And then the fungus creates the body of the organism and also helps to retain moisture. So one really cool thing about lichens is that if you're ever in a pinch and you need to navigate, lichens can help you do that because they generally grow on the north side of things, because that's where it's cooler and shadier, and that's what they like. So keep in mind when you're in the forest, there's a lot of cool shady spots. So if you're trying to navigate with lichens, you really have to look for a while at several different lichens and see what the pattern is so you can figure out which way is north and which way is south. So we're going to walk up some more and try to figure out which way is north and south by looking for lichens. So remember, we're looking for that kind of light greenish color on the trees. Okay, so I walked up this hill, and I know it's probably a little challenging to tell in the video, but hopefully you could see that there are a lot of lichens on the trees as I was walking up. As I turn around and you look back at these trees that I just passed, you probably notice that they're a little bit different color. There's not really any lichens on this side of the tree. So as I was walking to the south, and then if I went back from where I came, that would be going north. So north is that way, and south is behind me. So you may notice that the blaze color behind me has now changed to white. So that means we are on the Appalachian Trail now. The Appalachian Trail is about 2,200 miles long. It runs from Georgia all the way to Maine. So at this point at the Northern Virginia 4-H Center, we're pretty close to the middle of the Appalachian Trail. If you were to hike the whole entire length of the Appalachian Trail, you'd probably need about 4 to 6 months to do the whole thing. So another cool plant that's all along this trail on both sides is the spice bush. So the spice bush is just about as tall as me, maybe a little bit taller in some cases, and it smells really wonderful if you take some of the leaves off. So I wish you all could smell that right now. But if I had to describe it, it's kind of like citrusy and a little bit spicy too. And you can make a tea that has a similar flavor to that if you collect some of these twigs here and you just boil them in water. So apparently Native Americans used to use that tea to combat flatulence. So that's a fun fact. Also, if we came back here in the fall, there would be these red berries all over these bushes, and the berries are actually edible too. So the berries have a fleshy outer part, and that is kind of sweet and reminiscent of like chai tea or allspice, which you would use in, your pumpkin spice lattes and whatnot. So some people actually go to the effort of collecting those berries, harvesting the fleshy part and making ice cream out of that. And then the inner part of the berry is a black seed, which if you grind up, it can be used just like black pepper. So lots of uses to this plant, and it is everywhere. It is actually a native species, meaning that it originates from this area, but it kind of acts like an invasive species because deer do not like to eat it. So what happens is they eat all of the other plants around the spice bush, but then they leave the spice bush. So the spice bush is now everywhere, so you don't really have to feel too bad about harvesting some if you want to try it. This is called a tulip poplar, and a tulip poplar is especially beautiful this time of year because it has these flowers that look just like tulips. So it's hard to see from this vantage point, but luckily I found one on the ground. So this is what they look like. Tulip poplars are also fabulous because if there are morel spores around, they prefer to grow at the base of tulip poplars. So this is the tulip poplar if we were to look on the ground and it were maybe like 2 months ago, we might find some morels in this spot. Again, you have to have the spores present to find them, but morels are really delicious mushrooms, and you really have to go with someone that is trained in hunting mushrooms the first time that you hunt them to make sure you're eating the right thing. But if you do find them, they are very delicious. This is sassafras, and sassafras is really easy to identify by its really unique leaves. It has 3 different types of leaves on the tree. It has one that kind of looks like a turkey foot, one that looks like a mitten, and then one that looks like a regular leaf. So sassafras was used when people first started making root beer. The root has that distinctive root beer flavor and root beer smell. This is another plant that has edible berries. This is called Japanese wineberry. It's a non-native species, meaning that it came from Japan, not from this area originally. But it does have really delicious berries on it from mid-June to mid-July. And they look and taste a lot like raspberries. And you'll usually find them at the edge of forests, along trails, and maybe along the sides of roads. So I am done with my hike today. I hope you enjoyed hiking with me and learning about some of the cool stuff I saw along the way. Of course, I encourage you to get out in nature and take a real hike and learn about some of the cool things that you see in your area. Hiking is such a fabulous way to relieve some stress, get some exercise, and get some fresh air. So I hope you make some time to do that this summer. Have a great summer.